It's time to lock in. We're talking SEC, college football, and more. This is AP as we see it.
I'm all about the action. I'm all about the action. I'm all about the action. I said I'm all about that action.
Hi, I'm AP Stedham from LA, Lower Alabama. This is AP As We See It, a weekly syndicated show discussing the Southeastern Conference, college football on the national scene, and other sports. Welcome to another edition of AP As We See It. We'd like to direct you to our social media platforms. Every episode is on our YouTube channel, AP As We See It, and archived on Spotify as well. We have the links to the shows on our Facebook pages, our Instagram pages, our X account, and you can reach out with any questions you have on those social media platforms. We'd like to entertain some questions as anytime that you want to send those. We want to thank our sponsors, Greer's Markets, 29 locations, Alabama, Florida, Mississippi. Greer's has excellent food at reasonable prices. They have the Lucy's recipes. She has a book out, so you can buy those recipes at the store or online as well. They have the groceries to go that delivers to your office, your venue, your home. If you're preparing those meals for the big SEC football games, basketball, baseball games, softball, gymnastics, and so forth. Also, the special weekly specials that are online, check those out. They have the coloring contest monthly for the children, and on special occasions, the holidays, the birthdays, the anniversaries, you can purchase the fresh produce, the dinner essentials, delicious food and snacks at unbeatable prices. And remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it. And like I said, groceries to go. If you can't make it down to the store, click on there and they'll deliver it to any venue or your house as well. We also like to mention the Cortland Grand Hotel, downtown Atlanta. I'll be staying there for the SEC Media Days in Atlanta. They have the spacious rooms, the indoor pool with the tropical setting. It's right downtown in the heart of Atlanta. There's the restaurants, the gift shops, the outstanding breakfast and lounge area. And Ben Giacomo and staff do a tremendous job with their hospitality. So check out Greer's Markets. 29 locations, Alabama, Florida, Mississippi, and the Cortland Grand Hotel, downtown Atlanta. We'd like to also advise you of our guests this week. Segment 3 and 4, we'll have Hale McGranahan. He's with 247 Sports, the Big Spur. He covers South Carolina, primarily South Carolina football. That's segment 3 and 4. But now we'd like to bring out our special guest is Arthur Bryant. There's Arthur. He is a sports law trailblazer living in the Bay Area. Arthur, welcome to AP As We See It. Glad to have you here this week.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Arthur, this house settlement, you're right in the thick of that, that case that really changed college athletics. We know this has been coming. I tell people, Arthur, for 50 years, they're going to play players, and they couldn't figure out a plan that was sufficient, so they had to go through the court system. So what do you like to tell people, Arthur, about the house settlement that has about $20.5 million of revenue to share?
Well, I think it's great that athletes are going to get paid. The basic objection that I have and my clients have and my co-counsel Malone Lampkin has is that the way they're being paid is utterly unfair and discriminatory and a violation of federal law. Under federal law, all schools that receive federal funds, which is every college and university in the country, are prohibited from discriminating on the basis of sex. Title IX was of the Civil Rights Act, 1972. So we're talking about, let me think, 53 years ago.
Right.
Said exactly that. If you take in federal funds as schools, you can't discriminate on the basis of sex. Now, it had an enormous impact. I mean, it's hard to imagine, or certainly many people alive now weren't alive then, would be stunned to hear. Back then, entire schools, graduate schools, law schools, medical schools, business schools, were closed to women entirely. Yes, men were excluded from nursing schools, but the vast majority of the discrimination was against women. Jobs, graduate assistant positions, all things like that were closed to women. The discrimination was rampant and just stunning in retrospect, just how horrible it was. All of that's gone because of Title IX. So Title IX has had an enormous positive impact. But the place that's had the biggest visible impact in terms of recognition has been sports. And the reason is because sports is the one area of education where there are separate programs for men and women. And there, the law is very clear. If you have separate programs for men and women, that's fine. You should have, that's okay. But they have to be equal. They have to be separate and equal. That is, they have to provide women and men with equal opportunities to play sports, equal athletic financial aid, and in this case, in particular, equal treatment and benefits. So that is, if you're going to run an athletic program, no matter how small or how big, you got to treat the men and women equally. You got to treat the girls and the boys equally. You have to treat our sons and our daughters equally. And when Title IX was first adopted, there were people, including the NCAA and a bunch of its members, who said, well, wait, we should be exempting football from this. We should be exempting men's basketball, revenue-producing sports from this. And Congress said, absolutely not. This is a civil rights law. This is about equal treatment. You cannot discriminate against women to make money. You can't discriminate against women to avoid losing money. You can't discriminate against women because some men like men's sports, or even women like men's sports more than women's. I'm sorry, like men's sports more than women's sports. And you can't discriminate against women because some people like to watch men's sports more than women's sports. When Title IX was enacted 53 years ago, the NCAA and a bunch of men's sports advocates said that football and men's basketball should be exempted from it because they made money. They called them revenue-producing sports, and that those sports should be exempted from Title IX. And Congress said, absolutely not. This is a civil rights statute. It ensures that our women and men are going to be treated equally. Daughters and sons are going to be treated equally. And you cannot discriminate against women to make money. You can't discriminate against women to avoid losing money. You can't discriminate against women because some people like men's sports more than women's sports, or some people want to have the men paid more than have the women paid. So that's discrimination. We're not going to allow it. And several times since then, there have been efforts to amend Title IX to exempt revenue-producing sports or football or men's basketball from Title IX, and Congress has rejected that every single time. So what's particularly wrong about the proposed House settlement, now approved by the district court judge, is that it treats the women way, way worse than the men. It discriminates against them blatantly. So there are several parts to the settlement, but one major part you referred to is it would pay over $2 billion over 10 years to male athletes and female athletes for the ways in which they were denied income because of the NCAA's rules against name, image, and likeness payments and pay for play. Now, those rules applied equally to men and women, but the distribution of that, it's over $2 billion, is 90% are going to the men football players and men basketball players. 5% are going to the women's basketball players, and 5% is going to everybody else. It's a clear violation of Title IX and the whole principle behind Title IX. It is effectively on these payments letting the NCAA go ahead and make a revenue-producing sport exception to Title IX when Congress said absolutely not, that's contrary to the law. So that's the first objection we've advanced.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting moving forward. July 1st date is when it goes into effect, but I think you're going to have a lot of business, Arthur, being in the courtroom defending this Title IX. I don't think you have any issues with producing revenue for yourself and your colleagues, because there's still those attempts, as you said, even though through the years, over decades, have just nullified those attempts to discriminate against women in the other sports. That was one of the things I heard, Arthur, from some athletic departments, and we just here in the last minute, I'm just going to speak for a moment. But Arthur, in the last few months, you heard athletic directors mention right away, well, we might have to cut some sports. We might have to cut some women's sports. We might have to, those Olympic sports are in jeopardy. And I just thought with all this money floating around, it's like when they had the World Series and they're fighting over money. It wasn't any other reason, but you have so much money, they couldn't decide how to share the money. And here it is, college athletics, all this money that's at an all-time high, exceptional revenue by these athletic departments, and you're discussing cutting a team. So we're going to be right back after these messages with our guest, Arthur Bryant, the sports law trailblazer, and we'll continue our discussion of the House settlement and a few other issues with our guest, Arthur Bryant. We'll be right back after these messages with AP as we see it. Hi, I'm AP Stedham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greers.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it. And we're back with AP as we see it, and our very special guest, Arthur Bryant, sports law trailblazer, living in the Bay Area. Arthur, you were discussing the first objection. Now we're going to get into the second and the third objection of the House settlement.
The first objection was about the distribution of the money from the past. The second, actually where Title IX comes up, and it's not really an objection, it's what's coming next. And that is the second part of the class action settlement in House authorizes schools going forward to pay up to $22.5 million or more a year to their women and men athletes for name, image, and likeness and for pay for play. And that's fine in terms of them getting paid, although there's a serious antitrust question. But for Title IX, the issue is the settlement does not say how that money is supposed to be distributed. These are payments that are going to be made directly by the schools that opt into this part of the settlement, which is going to be every major SEC school, for example. And the law is clear. If the schools are making these payments because of Title IX, these payments have to be distributed proportionally, equally to the women and men athletes. So if women are 55% of the athletes, they need to get 55% of these dollars. Now, some schools are announcing that's what they're going to do because they recognize that's federal law and Title IX requires it. But other schools are announcing, oh no, we're going to give 90% to the men's football and basketball players, and maybe 5% to the women's basketball players and 5% to everybody else. Any school that does that is walking into a major Title IX lawsuit because it's against the law, period. And they can pretend they don't know the law. They can pretend that, they're ignorant, but ignorance of the law is no excuse, and they know the law. The law requires them to treat men and women equally, including in terms of treatment and benefits of athletic financial aid. So there will be enormous, I believe, Title IX litigation coming out of that for any school or many schools that distribute the money unequally. And then the third objection to the settlement itself was that in a class action, the law, because you're representing women and men from all around the country, the requirement is if there are conflicts between them, they need to have separate counsel. If you're baking a cake, the bakers have to make sure that they're not biased in one person's direction or the other, and they're fairly treating everybody. Well, you can tell from the way this cake came out, utterly lopsided in front of the then, that the bakers here were not equally, treating the men and the women. They were favoring the men enormously. The women were not adequately represented. And under the Constitution and the federal rules of civil procedure, that's a violation process-wise. And so basically the law says, no, you have to go back and have the cake baked by people who are, not biased. Both the Constitution and the federal rules of civil procedure say, if you're going to be affecting people who are not in the courthouse through a class action, then all of the people have to be adequately represented. And if there's a conflict between them, they have to have separate representation. When this lawsuit was filed, the lawyers said in the first document, the complaint that started the case, we know the NCAA has treated the women unfairly. This lawsuit is going to make up for that and make sure they are treated fairly. But the settlement didn't treat them fairly at all. And in fact, they told their expert witness, the economist who was going to figure out how much money got distributed to whom, to pay no attention to Title IX. Well, you couldn't be more unfair and inadequately representing the women if you don't even pay attention to Title IX. So our third objection is the women were not adequately represented in this class action, and they need to be. So you're going to have to basically start again with separate lawyers for the women to make sure the deal that comes out is fair and the cake basically is properly baked.
Arthur, I was going to ask you about NIL deals. You probably have some clients that come to you and they're questioning the NIL deals. Have you seen a proliferation of schools trying to present some rules with these NIL deals that are skewed towards the schools and the colleges and universities, where it puts some restrictions on them?
Well, I have not been involved in that way, but I have in another way. So let me just flag that, which is, to be clear, Title IX does not apply if a totally independent third party, not related to the school,
Right.
like Pizza Hut, for example, says, we want to pay all the football players $500 a month and nothing to the women. Title IX doesn't apply because Title IX only applies to educational institutions receiving federal funds, and Pizza Hut is not one of those,
Right,
at least
right.
as far as we know, right?
Right.
But if the school and Pizza Hut cut a deal, and the Pizza Hut is the official pizza provider, so Pizza Hut, as far as we know, is not an educational institution receiving federal funds.
No.
But if the school has a deal with Pizza Hut, and it's the official pizza provider of the school, and the school's logos are on the Pizza Hut boxes, and the Pizza Hut goes out and helps recruit the star football recruit the school once, because how would Pizza Hut know who to recruit otherwise?
Right.
Then the school is directly involved, and Title IX applies. So instead of an independent third party, once the school get involved with NIL payments, then all of a sudden Title IX applies, and the school has to provide equal treatment and benefits to the women and men. And that's true whether or not the school has something they call a collective involved in the middle, whether or not they're going through some court proceeding, in our view at least. If the school is involved in making payments, NIL payments, then Title IX applies to them.
Arthur, do you think it's going to be very difficult for the commission? Maybe it might be a little bit out of the scope of your expertise, but there's a commission that that has evolved and developed where they're going to be sending all these NIL deals to Deloitte to monitor them over $600. And I'm thinking, my goodness, that's quite an assignment when you think of just the football teams, the basketball teams, the women's basketball, all the teams of the universities. That's thousands and thousands of deals that Deloitte will have to oversee. These are the ones that are $600 plus. Do you think that's going to happen? Because I just don't see all these athletes being that fastidious with reporting all these deals.
Or the people paying them being all that fastidious either.
Right, correct.
I think it's going to be a nightmare, and I will be astonished if there is not an enormous amount of cheating and hiding of information and litigation, not Title IX litigation, but other kinds of litigation, where people say I was promised something and then other people say they weren't, or they're not approved when they should be approved, and
Right.
because the dollars are at stake are significant. You'll see people wanting to sue every which way. It's a really nightmare in the making.
You know, Arthur, when I first started watching sports many years ago, I thought the SEC, I heard this story that when Title IX was approved, they did not want anything to happen to their football programs. So they made sure they started with some women's programs because they didn't want anyone fussing with that revenue cash that was being taken in by these big universities in the South, the Southeastern Conference. How was the SEC overall, Arthur, in compared to other conferences, would you say, in
Well,
complying?
I don't have a great deal of information about that. I can say it is possible for a school to run a big time collegiate football program, et cetera, and comply fully with Title IX if it wants to. It really just comes down to the school's commitment and recognition that, look, this is not just, it feels weird to say this as a lawyer, this is not just the law. It's also just plain old simple right and wrong.
Right.
What the law says is you can't discriminate on the basis of sex. You have to treat our daughters as well as our sons. Everybody knows that's true. Little kids know that's true. Why in the world would somebody think, oh, because we're making money off of it, it's okay? It isn't okay. So I will say that some schools, however, have been exemplary. A couple of years ago, Clemson eliminated or tried to eliminate its men's track, field, and cross country programs. We actually sued on behalf of the men, and my colleagues sued on behalf of the women. The men were being deprived of equal opportunities to play sports. The women were being denied equal athletic financial aid and equal treatment. Clemson agreed to provide everyone what they should have gotten. It put back the men's teams, it added 2 women's teams, and committed to giving women equal athletic financial aid and equal treatment. And of course, they had the money to do it, but more importantly, they made the commitment to do it. And that's what the schools need to do in the SEC and elsewhere that aren't doing it.
Hey, Arthur, we'd like to thank our special guest, Arthur Bryant, the sports law trailblazer. And Arthur, I'm sure we're going to be hearing from you again because this is not a perfect situation. It's I don't know how long it's going to last, but the discrimination is something that's always on the forefront in this country. We fight against it the best we can, and we keep on the move. But thank you so much for being our guest on AP As We See It. Arthur Bryant, the sports law trailblazer. We'll be right back after these messages with AP As We See It. Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm AP Stedham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greers.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it. And we're back with AP As We See It, and our very special guest from South Carolina, Hale McGranahan from 247 Sports, the Big Spur. I love that. I love that, Hale. Welcome to AP As We See It.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on, AP.
Yeah, Hale, this South Carolina team, I know that they have high expectations because of the quarterback positions, Lenoris Sellers. I was able to visit with him a while, and you put it on your site. I appreciate it. At the Manning Passing Academy. So we'll start with the quarterback, Lenoris Sellers. What would you like to see this year from Lenoris, Hale?
I think if he can put together a more consistent start to finish type of season. I mean, obviously last year he was a redshirt freshman making his first start against Old Dominion, and that was probably his worst outing of the season. And he had some really good moments in the couple games that followed, and there were some ups and downs along the way. But by the time November rolled around and they started that month with Texas A&M and finished it with Clemson and won 5 games, and he was very much a part of the national conversation with everything that he was doing and helping South Carolina get into the playoff picture. AP, I looked at it like this: if Lenoris had done what he did in November during September, October, he would have probably been the front runner for the Heisman Trophy at that point in the year. So if he can just find some consistency out the chute and maintain that till the end, I think it'll be a really productive season for him and probably for the team as well.
Mm-hmm. 9-4 season last year, ended up 19th in the AP and the coaches poll, 5-3 in the conference. Shane Beamer, he's really got this program on the right trajectory. Why? What happened?
Well, he's gotten some really good quarterback play. For one, that's probably the best place to start for anybody when they're having success as a football team. You probably are really good at quarterback, and obviously Lenoris, like we were talking about, but Spencer Rattler had 2 really solid years. Beamer's first season, the quarterback situation was interesting to say the least, but that's probably where it starts. And then last year, of course, it wasn't just the Lenoris Seller shows. The defense was outstanding in 2024 for South Carolina. So that's been a big part of it as well. And if you go back to that first season in 2021, they had some really good players on defense as well. So just real quick snapshot, fantastic quarterback play and some really good defense. And it seems pretty generic, but that's been kind of the best way to sum it up, I think.
Simple formula, sure is. Hale, Dylan Stewart, he was an exceptional edge rusher last year as a freshman. He's probably the leader of that defense, would you say?
In terms of overall talent, I would say he's the most talented. But if we're talking strictly from a leadership standpoint, there are probably some other guys because they've got some dudes who've been around for a while. DQ Smith, who's started at safety since he was a freshman. He's about to be a senior. I would say he's one. Nick Barrett, who plays defensive tackle, and he was a part of that first signing class that Beamer brought in, committed to Will Muschamp originally. And he's been behind some other defensive tackles over the years and played a little bit, but not a ton. He's definitely a guy that you could put into that leadership category, and he's going to play a lot this season for sure. But Dylan Stewart, obviously one of, if not the most talented players in the country. So yeah, that's what he's really got going for him. But he's one of those types of people, not just a player, but a person who he's a little reserved and quiet if you don't know him. But once you start to get to know him and he gets to know you, he sort of opens up a little bit. So maybe we'll see him evolve some that way this year, and who knows what next year holds. But yeah, I think that that's the best way I could put it with him.
Mm-hmm. Jalen Kilgore, 5 interceptions in the defensive backfield. I guess they're counting on him to measure up again in the secondary.
Yeah, AP, that stat to me is one that frankly I kind of overlooked last year and really didn't follow all that closely with how he stacked up in the SEC, and he finished tied for the lead league in interceptions. And that was probably like the 5th most impressive thing about that defense last year. I mean, Dylan Stewart, like we were talking about, and him coming on and exceeding 5-star expectations, that certainly got a lot of attention. Kyle Kennard, who's one of the best defensive players in the country at that other defensive end spot, a Nagurski Award guy, he was a big deal. At linebacker, there's Demetrius Knight, who transferred in last year, like Kennard was a first-year transfer, and Demetrius Knight was an impact player and was the heartbeat, the leader of that defense, and was awesome to watch play. And Nicky Manwari, who was along those lines as well from a leadership standpoint, was really, really good. And so then you get to Jalen Kilgore, and it's like, oh, by the way, he had he was tied for the lead in the league in interceptions. So Kilgore has been a starter since he was a freshman going into his junior year. He's played safety. He's played nickel. He was mostly a nickel back last year. So the interesting thing with Kilgore this year is how they're going to use him. And they've got some flexibility with what they'll be able to do. And some of that stems from some of the other guys that they have in the secondary as well. But I'm a big Jalen Kilgore fan. I've liked him a lot. Since he was a high school recruit, and credit to Torian Gray, the defensive backs coach, because when he offered Jalen Kilgore his junior year, Kilgore didn't have a 24/7 profile. His only other offer was like Southeast Missouri State, and he ended up being like a high 4-star and a big-time recruit, and obviously a really good player.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's amazing how the leader of the conference has 5 interceptions. You would think with all these passes thrown, Hale, that the number would be bigger, but I think it's an indication of the short passing game and they throw those long handoffs to the right and to the left. The number 5 is the leader in the SEC with all those fast defensive backs and people pressuring the quarterback. But he's still one of the better defensive backs in the conference. I was looking at your punter. I guess pretty good. He's the holder as well. Mason Love, pretty good punter and holder, but need a new kicker this year.
Yeah, well, so this will be Love's first year punting. He's replacing Kai Kroger, who was really productive during his 5 years of doing it. So Love was a guy who they recruited out of high school to come in and be a punter. And kind of during his senior year in high school, he was kicking field goals and stuff and ended up having a lot of very long field goals. I can't remember exactly what his long was that year, but I think it was in the 50s. So he's got a big leg and he kind of made himself a viable candidate to be the place kicker here too. So I don't know that it's going to play out that way because he is going to be the punter, and I'm not sure that Shane Beamer and Joe DeCamillis, the special teams coordinator, necessarily are trying to make that happen. But they've got a freshman coming in and Max Kelly and have some other guys who have been around the program as walk-ons for a few years. So it's kind of a wide open race right now, and certainly one of the more intriguing position battles for Carolina fans.
Oh, yeah. Shane Beamer and Joe DeCamillis, those are two familiar names in special teams, I can tell you. Even I recognize the assistant coach there, Joe DeCamillis, as being a special teams extraordinary coach. But I was noticing on the schedule something interesting. Maybe it's something unique to South Carolina. They played 3 non-conference games. Among them it's 4 actually, but it's 3 South Carolina teams: South Carolina State, Coastal Carolina, and also Clemson. I'm not sure if there's a state school that plays 3 teams from the state. How did all that happen? Do you know, Hale?
Yes, that's an interesting question, and I don't know what the answer to that is as far as other teams who do it. Obviously, South Carolina and Clemson play every year.
Yes.
And typically there's a Coastal thrown in there, or SC State, obviously, or Wofford or Furman, and usually it's just one of those teams, and there's like a Sun Belt team mixed in there as well. But I can't remember for sure, but there was the reason there are 2 this year, 2 of the lower level schools. I want to say it's because they were scheduled to play App State this year, and that game was canceled. I think I'm right in saying that. I can't remember 100% off the top of my head. Don't quote me on it, but if any of the listeners want to fact check me, Google that and fact check me. I'm pretty sure that's what was supposed to happen this year when it was put on the schedule, back 8-9 years ago, since obviously we all know college football schedules are scheduled pretty far in advance.
Okay. Hey, hold on for a second. Hal, hold on. Oh, he dialed me. David dialed me. So I'm just going to mention Virginia Tech. We'll probably continue, but hold on. Let me just fix this. So keep recording. There we go. Okay. Let me start this again. So, Hale, the other thing about the schedule I wanted to mention, we just have 40 seconds in this segment. We'll continue, but Virginia Tech, that's a familiar name in the Beamer household. So quite interesting to play that game in Atlanta, Georgia. That'll be that's a Sunday game. Is that right, Hale?
That's right. It's Sunday, August the 31st, and the storyline is certainly obvious with Shane's connection to Virginia Tech, his dad, the legendary coach, and obviously Shane was a coach and he played there for his dad as well. So that I know is an exciting matchup for that family.
Hey, Hale, we're going to be right back after these messages with Hale McGranahan from 247 Sports. I say the Big Spur. That's what I'm calling it. But we'll be right back after these messages with AP as we see it. Hi, I'm AP Stedham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greers.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. they guarantee it. And we're back with AP as we see it, and we want to thank our sponsors in this last segment before we get back to Hale and the South Carolina Gamecocks. Greer's Markets, 29 locations, Alabama, Florida, Mississippi. And remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it. And the Cortland Grand Hotel in the heart of Atlanta. I'll be staying there for the SEC Football Media Days. Make sure you check out Ben Jacquemour and his staff. They do a tremendous job with all their hospitality and the spacious rooms and the pool and the buffet breakfast. So we want to thank our sponsors, Greer's Markets and Cortland Grand Hotel, downtown Atlanta. Hale, I wanted to go back to the offense for a second. The running backs, what can you tell us about the running backs for South Carolina this year and how they can contribute to the offense?
Well, as we sit here on July the 2nd and record this, it's a little bit up in the air. They brought in Rasul Faison, a transfer from Utah State, and it's not 100% one way or the other whether or not he's going to be eligible to play this year. He's trying to get a waiver from the NCAA, and they've been working on that since January. So the last I heard when I spoke with Shane Beamer a week ago was he was hopeful that a resolution would come the middle of this month. So we'll see. Beyond that, Oscar Attaway, who transferred in from North Texas, is back. He transferred in last season. He had some productive moments, especially in that bowl game, filling in for Rocket Sanders as the starter. Jawarn Howell, another guy who transferred in before last season from South Carolina State, is a factor. Matthew Fuller, who's going into his second year, they got him out of high school, really talented 4-star from Georgia, and of course the fifth guy to speak of is Isaiah Augustavi, who's transferred in from Colorado. They just got him here in June. So there's a lot of names and some unknowns as far as who's going to really assert themselves as the guy. Personally, I think it could be really any one of them.
Any one of them?
But yeah, honestly, I do. I think they're all kind of right there in terms of talent and skill set. For the most part, I think we could look up at the end of this year, and they all are very similar in terms of production and numbers and all that stuff. So I know some people think it's going to be Faison if he can play, but I'm more of the belief that it's going to be kind of spread out and dispersed as far as the stats go.
Yeah, that's a nice feature for your coaching staff to be able to count on several running backs because we know they get injured and some have better days against a team than others. So that's something good for the Gamecocks. Every quarterback needs a support, Hale. Let's look at those wide receivers first.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting group. 4 guys are back from last year. Nick Harbor, the big sprinter, Olympic level potentially. If that was all he did, he could maybe be an Olympian. He qualified for the track and field trials, U.S. track and field trials last summer, and decided that he would call the track season and end at that point because it was getting into around this time of the year, and he had to start getting ready for football.
Right.
So he's pretty raw as a player, but he really came on last season in November. Probably not a coincidence when Lenore started playing his best. Nick Harbor was making some plays for him. So he's been all football this offseason, didn't run any track for the South Carolina track team. And folks are obviously pumped up about what he's going to be able to do. Mazio Bennett, who's also back, plays out of the slot, was kind of the go-to guy there for a little bit as a wide receiver for Lenore's last season. He's going to have a role. And then also back are Jared Brown and Dre Jacobs, both of whom transferred in before the 2024 season. Then they got 6 freshmen who 5 of them enrolled early. One of them came in June. 2 of them actually moved up from the 2026 signing class so they could be here now and are on the team. And they're all very talented. There's a diverse skill set there. They got big guys who can run. They got little guys who can run and make you miss after the catch. So it could be sort of like running back AP. I wouldn't be surprised if really any one of those receivers emerges as like a starter or rotation guy. It could be pick a name out of your hat, and that could end up being one of the top guys. It's exciting that way, but maybe also a little concerning if if you're a Carolina fan and probably going to be counting on some of those freshmen.
Yeah, you'd like to see people emerge as the receiver that reacts to the ball in the air and takes command. Yeah, that's something that the younger players, they probably have to learn, because in high school they had an advantage maybe athletically, but coaches love depth, and so do fans as well. The tight end, I love the tight ends, Hale, and on any team, that's the best advantage in the passing game, I believe. How are the tight ends this year for South Carolina?
So they got a couple guys coming back. Michael Smith, who played a lot as a freshman last year, was the second tight end on the team behind Josh Simon, who led the team in catches, and he's moved on. But Michael Smith, who played a bunch, like I said, Brady Hunt, who transferred in last year from Ball State, played a little bit. Then they brought in a transfer from Kentucky, Jordan Dingle, who I'm pretty excited about, and what he can potentially add as a replacement almost for Josh Simon, because he played a bunch at Kentucky. Stats aren't huge. I think in part because Kentucky had some struggles on offense, and
they did.
They do like to run the ball, but Kentucky also had somehow all those really good receivers like Dan Key and Barry and Brown, and somehow still had their issues on offense. So I think Dingle is a guy who I'm really interested to see, and probably someone who's maybe gotten a little overlooked since this last transfer class came in, and as someone who I think could be like a sneaky potential impact guy for this offense.
Mm-hmm. The quarterback, you're trying to keep him upright all the time, Hale. That offensive line, how well did they protect him last year? And who's back and returning to continue that success? Or did they bring in some other people as additions to beef up that line?
Well, they didn't protect him very well for the first month and a half or two of the season. It was pretty rough at times. And just looking at the sack numbers during that stretch of the season, like I said, it was tough. It was brutal, but something clicked in November. Like I've been saying throughout this podcast with you, whether it was Lenoris making guys miss, that was certainly a part of it. He had some plays where he bailed those guys out, but they also started playing better and gelling and meshing. And I think a lot of that was because they were able to go with the same five from the first game against Old Dominion till the last game of the season against Clemson. Both starting tackles are back, which is great for any football team at any level. Josiah Thompson at left tackle, and Kason Henry at right tackle. They've got some guys who can compete for those starting jobs with them. Tree Babalata, who started at left tackle as a freshman in 2023, he's in the mix there. Jatavius Shivers, who's also been around for a couple years and played some, he's also in the mix. Then inside at guard and center, they're replacing all three starters from last season there, and they've got a bunch of guys. They got first-year transfers. They got some guys they signed out of high school, and some guys who've started at times for this program. So it's, again, sort of a theme. It could be any number of guys inside at those spots, or really even for that matter at tackle. But they like the talent they've got and are optimistic that it's going to keep getting better in terms of the output and taking care of the quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Hale, in the remaining few minutes, what about Shane Beamer? What do you like to tell people who've not been around the Gamecock program and Shane Beamer and the way he coaches, and about this season particularly?
Yeah, I think the best way for me to answer that, AP, is people see him on TV and he's very animated and cheering for his team, and in the press conferences, he wears his emotions on his sleeve, and people will call him a CEO, head coach, and all that type of thing. And I'm sure there are people out there who say, well, he's only a head coach because of his last name. Yes. And maybe kind of discredit him as far as knowledge of the game and all that type of stuff.
Right.
But if you can get him talking X's and O's and breaking down what's going on the field, like, he's sharp. Like, he's really good, and he doesn't do it a lot. And I would say to his credit, because there are some head coaches out there who try to get real technical and breaking things down like that in interviews, and it's almost like it feels like you're kind of going out of your way to do that. I think he kind of goes out of his way to not do that, and I don't know what his motivation for that would be, but I think he doesn't get enough credit for that type of thing. Again, I think a lot of people just see him as this, CEO type of guy who some people would call him a cheerleader. And yeah, he does have those types of qualities, and I do call them qualities because those are important things to be as a head coach. But I don't think he gets enough credit for his knowledge and what he brings to the table that way.
Hey, Hale, we want to thank you so much. Hale McGranahan of 247 Sports, the Big Spur, covers the University of South Carolina Gamecocks football program. We really appreciate it. I think you helped our audience learn a lot about that team in Columbia. That's the real Columbia, I guess, right? The real Columbia, South Carolina. That's a little battle there in the SEC.
I don't get into that. I do know that that South Carolina has had its issues when they go out to Como in Missouri over the years. And we'll see. Right. We'll see what happens when that happens again here in September.
It makes for fun. Hey, well, that's the edition of this week's edition of AP As We See. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Greer's Markets. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it. And the Cortland Grand Hotel, downtown Atlanta. So we'll see you next week with another edition of AP As We See.